Good, Chief? Okay, thank you. Okay, we'll call the meeting to order and stand for the singing of O Canada. I know, it sounded really good with all the backup choir here. It's really good. Okay, so we have approval of agenda, additions or deletions, and there is one addition. I'm just trying to think of where to put it, and it is the public hearing for Herbert Street. Where do you think I should put that, CAO? Okay, let's do that. So the Herbert Street piece, can you pass me that pen? Thank you. The Herbert Street will go right after the minutes. So we'll call it 60. Any more additions or deletions, anyone? Okay, I'm looking for an approval of the agenda with that addition. Okay. Second. Moved and seconded. Any discussion? Question's been called. All those in favor? Aye. Contrary? Motion carried. Okay. Approval of minutes. Committee of the Whole, May 16th, 2017.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion? Question's been called. All those in favor? Aye. Contrary? Motion carried. Town Council, May 18th, 2017.
So moved.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion?
Question.
Question's been called. All those in favor? Aye. Contrary? Motion carried. Committee of the Whole, May 25th, 2017.
So moved.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion? Question's been called. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Contrary? Motion carried. And Town Council, May 25th.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion?
Question.
Question's been called. All those in favor? Aye. Contrary? Motion carried. So we've got the addition here, which is a public hearing, and certainly.
So, Your Worship, the public hearing is to consider a matter. The Town of Yarmouth is considering the lease of 2 and 6 Herbert Street to the Yarmouth Food Bank Society. It is proposed that the lease would be for the nominal price of $1 monthly. Section 51 of the Municipal Government Act permits a municipality to sell or lease property at a price less than market value to a non-profit organization that the Council considers to be carrying on an activity that is beneficial to the municipality. Where the town believes the value of the portion of the property is greater than $10,000, the town is required to hold a public hearing on the matter. The decision of Council must be approved by a 2/3 majority, and so this is the opportunity for the public to be heard. It's been advertised in the local paper, so if anybody wished to speak on the matter, this would be the time.
Okay. So in a public hearing, what happens is I will ask 3 times if anyone would like to speak to this issue. And if you wish to do so, just come to the microphone and tell us your name and where you reside. And then council doesn't discuss that at this moment. We just do it later on the agenda. So would anybody like to speak to this matter? Would anyone like to speak to this matter? And I'll ask the 3rd and final time, would anyone like to speak to this matter? Okay, hearing no one, I will move this to, yeah, I'm going to put it under, okay, under number 12, addition. So that will be, I'll just put Herbert Street and we'll know what it is. So that'll happen a little bit later. You good there, Reverend Newell, for a bit? Good stuff. Okay, and presentation. So we have Mr. Rodney Crow with regard to the sewer bylaw. Mr. Crow, welcome. And you can just come up. I think we know your name, but you can introduce yourself and let us know where you live. And when you, if you have something to pass out, you can certainly do that. But otherwise, just speak into the microphone because it's we're being taped. Oh, yes, it's on Eastlink too. Thank you. Yeah, good, thank you. So presentations, we usually do 10 minutes, thereabouts, and then, so, welcome.
Hi, my name's Rodney Crow. I live in Yarmouth.
It's just really, it's hard to hear, sorry.
Hi, my name's Rodney Crow. I live at Tooker Street in Yarmouth. I'm here to present my petition for a change in the sewer bylaw because I feel, and from the people I've talked to, most feel that it is unfair and unjustified. I can't understand how you can justify making the taxpayer pay for what is under the streets, which they have no control over. I bought property, I didn't buy a street. I pay taxes, which I assumed was going to pay for all this stuff. And so from doing this petition, I found that's exactly what everybody else felt too, that the town took care of what's under their property and the property owner was only responsible for what's on their property. I bought in town so I could avoid having to deal with sewers and water and all this, and I realize I'm paying higher taxes, and I figure that's why I'm paying higher taxes. I also pay a water and sewer bill, which I assume covered all that. And the same with everybody I talked to. The further I went into this petition, the more I knew I was doing the right thing, because that's just exactly how everybody else feels. It's completely unfair. If you're on the wrong side of the street, it gets more expensive as you go, and it just happens to be my case. I consider myself probably one of the luckier ones, simply because my bill's not nearly as high as some of the ones I've heard about. Just the same, it's a bill that I really didn't account for and honestly don't need. Anyway, I've done a little bit of research. I'm not real computer savvy and don't have a lot of resources, but I did look around. And I found there's other places that just don't follow the same rules we follow. The one that blew my mind the most, I guess, would have been our municipality. They're on our sewer system. Everything goes the same place ours goes, yet they don't have to worry about what's under the street in front of their home. They only have to deal with what's on their property. It makes no sense to me. Other places like Kentville, Mahone Bay, Chester, they're only responsible for what's on their property. Why is it that the town of Yarmouth feels that the taxpayer needs to pay for all this out of their pocket? It's just, I can't understand it. I've had people tell me story after story of what's happened to them, and I've talked to some people that they told me flat out, if this happened to them, they'd have to walk away from their homes because they just simply couldn't afford to do this. I mean, I got fed up and I thought about selling my house. I can't even do that until I fix it. So I'm stuck. I got no choice but to do what I got to do. Same with everybody else. And it's just completely unfair. Like I said, not every township agrees with the same thing. I'm pretty sure you guys received a letter from Martha.
I did see that one actually.
Martha Muse.
Yes.
Yes. She made some valid points there. She also sent me a copy of this letter, and I'm sure if a city the size of Montreal can afford to take over their infrastructure, I can't see why we can't. She's made a couple of, in her letter, she's made a couple of suggestions as to how this bylaw could be amended to make it a little more equitable to both parties. The town assumes its share of the cost of what's on their property, and the homeowner take care of what's on their property, which is the one I favor for myself. But there's other ones there, just going through them here again, paying, citizens pay for repairs based on their abilities to pay, or the shared cost of the citizens by increasing the taxes, which you're going to do anyway. Whether it's for sewer or something else, you're going to increase the taxes. We pay a water bill, which is half sewer. Where does that half the water bill go? Like, what's it for?
Is that a question?
Yes, that is a question.
Well, I'm going to let you, but I'm going to say pipes, sewage treatment plant, all those pieces. I'll let you, because you understand.
Yeah, so the operating cost of the town sewer system is covered by the sewer rate that you're charged on your bill. So we did an exercise over the last 5 years that has increased the sewer cost and decreased the tax rate, so that sewer fee is actually covering 100% of the operating costs of handling the sewer system.
Okay, wait, aren't the pipes, the infrastructure part of the sewer?
There, it doesn't cover the infrastructure replacement. So when we do a project like we're doing on Main Street and up Cliff Street, that is paid for out of our capital budget, not out of the sewer rates. That comes out of the tax rate.
Okay, so anyway, like I say, I've talked to person after person doing this petition. I've got over 1,500 signatures there saying they agree with me. And it's, most of these people were completely unaware of the fact that they were responsible for that pipe all the way out into the street. And I've even had people argue the fact with me. And it just, it's got to change. You got new families moving in here. I know of new families that have bought homes. If this happens to them, they're going to be taking their keys back to the bank. You want to keep people in this town, give them a reason to stay. I mean, this is why you guys were voted in, because you all made promises that you were going to do something to bring young families in and keep the old ones here.
Yeah,
And
they're coming.
They're not going to be able to stay here if they can't afford to stay in their home. Don't have a whole lot more to say about it. I just hope you guys can see the errors in the bylaw and that you're willing to do something to change it. If not, put it to public vote and just see what the people think.
Good. Councillor Hood?
Mr. Crowe, when you bought the home, did you have a realtor? Was there a realtor involved?
Yes, there was.
Did the realtor say anything to you about having a home inspection done?
Yes,
Did you have a home inspection done?
yes. And I had absolutely no issues with my home right up until the end of February. Not one issue.
Do you know if they inspected the sewer when you had the home inspection done?
I was assured that there was no problems with it, but no, he didn't run a camera down it or anything. Just check the flow of the water and everything. Everything worked fine.
So when you say you were assured that there were no problems, did you have opportunities to look at the realtor's records? They have a property condition disclosure sheet that attaches to every listing they do. Did you look at that?
I
And,
believe so.
And on that, it would say the owner of the property that you were buying it from would have to declare whether or not they'd had any problems with the sewer.
There was no issues stated.
Did you look at that?
There was no issue stated.
So the owner said there was no issues.
Yeah.
Do you know if there's been any issues with the sewer in that house before?
Well, no, I didn't check the history of the home past the owner I bought it off of, but
How old is the home?
it was built in mid to late 60s.
Okay. I have a question for the CAO. Have we got the ability to look back over, say, 10 years and quantify over 10 or so years, how many times do we have a record that would show us, or would the staff in the Public Works Department have a record to show us how many times we've had these problems and give us an idea what it would cost us to change this bylaw?
Yeah, Your Worship, I have asked that question, anticipating, knowing the petition was being circulated and, having talked to the council about it. So I did ask the question whether we had statistics specifically around sewer lateral failures, and actually we don't. We don't keep specific records on that because that hasn't been our cost to deal with. The only part where we become aware of it, usually if somebody has a sewer problem, they'll call the town. Because the sewer main is our responsibility, our guys will show up, they'll talk to the homeowner, they'll lift some manhole covers and see if the sewer is flowing in the street. If it's flowing in the street, the assumption is it's probably in the lateral, which is not the town's, and so they call a plumber to snake or to see if they can clear a blockage within the lateral.
But when they're going to open up our street,
Yep.
they have to apply to the town, and
Right.
they have to pay a deposit. We'd have a record of how many times that's been done, wouldn't we?
We might have some idea, but it wouldn't necessarily be that every time.
Well, at least it would give us a minimum idea of how much it would cost, maybe not the maximum.
It would give us a ballpark.
Well, a ballpark figure would be better than no figure for us to consider as we go forward, I would think. So
If you want to make that a motion.
I'll make a motion that,
Okay, wait a minute, wait a second.
yeah.
What's there to consider other than the fact that the homeowner's paying taxes that they have this taken care of? I mean, that's why we pay taxes, to maintain our infrastructure, to maintain what the services you offer us.
We don't pay taxes.
Actually, the services that we're required to have. Like, I mean, I can't drill my own well or put my own septic system on my property. I have to be on the town system. But I shouldn't have to dig up the town streets and repave them. Nobody in this town should have to do that but the town. That's why we pay taxes.
Well, that's an argument that I'd rather not pursue right now. Right now, I'm looking for information to see what it would cost before we even think about doing anything like this. But I will be argumentative now that you've raised the issue. You have drain spouts coming down the side of your house?
Pardon me?
Do you have drain spouts come down the side of your house from
Yes,
your
I do.
eaves? Yeah. And if you have a flood as a result of those things coming up, it's the town's responsibility?
Sorry, I didn't.
If they malfunction and you have rain coming down your downspouts and it goes into your basement through the foundation or whatever, do you think the town should be responsible for that?
No, I don't. That's on my property. That's what I paid for, was what my home and anything dealing with my home. I didn't buy the street. That's what I'm trying to get at. I got no problem with fixing the pipe that runs from my house to the end of my property line. None whatsoever.
So where?
I'm not arguing that one little bit.
So, in your case, is the sewer working right now?
Cautiously, yes. It's working, but I got no choice but to fix it this year, because what's happening is my pipe broke away and it's dropping below the pipe it's supposed to be hooked to,
Where is it doing that?
under the street.
And how do you know that? How far
Because I
was it
had
up?
Graves Electrical, run their camera through,
Yeah.
and we went out and we marked the road where the break is in the pipe. I can tell you right now, it's 6 foot 9 inches below the surface of the road. About 3 feet out on my side of the road under the street. But my connection is on the other side of the street. And if it's got to come out of my pocket to pay for it, then I'm not going to just make a little repair. I'm going to fix it from the main line all the way to my house. Do it one time instead of once every 6 months at a large expense.
CAO?
Your
I'll
wor-
keep your
I
light
have no
on,
other questions, Ruth.
but I can keep your light on if you need it.
Your Worship, Council's already asked for a staff report on this, so I can include the data such that we have within that report. So wouldn't require a second motion, I'll just make sure we do that.
You need a second motion for what, Pete?
You don't need a second
No, I
motion.
didn't think so. Okay. All right, good. Okay, thank you. And Mr. Crow, good on you for knocking on all those doors. Seriously, you're So just for, I know Mr. Crow's aware of this, but others may not be. We don't make a decision the night of a presentation, so I don't want anybody to think that we've just pushed it to the side. We'll certainly bring it to another meeting and have more discussion there. Mr. Gray?
Yes,
If-
is it possible for?
You come right on up. I can give you a couple minutes. Just state your name and where you reside.
My name is Wayne Gray, and I live at 240 Pleasant Street. Rodney came around with his petition, and I signed the petition. My wife signed the petition. I think that the point he's making regarding the property, his property line, the town line, and where the sewer line is an issue, because if you live on a street like mine, which is Pleasant Street, the amount of traffic going up and down that road is far more than you get on Main Street. And it's all heavy-duty traffic. I don't mind the traffic, but what's that doing under the ground? And if it is a collapse of the pipe, and the pipe that collapses is within the town's easement on the street, whatever that may be, then what caused it? And the thing is, if you have a situation where the problem with it is blockage, then you look to the homeowner to see, well, did you block it? Was it something you put in there? But it's got to be dug up. Somebody's got to do it. And of course, right now, as I understand it, and I may be wrong, is that the homeowners would be responsible to pay for, would have to contract a contractor and pay for the digging up to examine the situation to find out what it was. I don't think that's quite fair in the issue of just every day, everybody, you have to do this. When you get done with that examination and you determine that yes, there were diapers and there were all kinds of stuff sent down the drain that shouldn't have been, then you look to the homeowner, whether it's a rental property, whether it's a property that's not a home but a business or whatever, the 2,600 laterals that you have, you know, all of them. But when you have a collapse of the pipe and it's within the easement of the town, and I believe the town should take care of that. Also, I would say that I wouldn't be averse to some sort of a ongoing fee that would be dedicated to the ongoing maintenance of the sewer lines, the whole sewer system, but those situations where the homeowners, the individual property owners, are being charged for this type of problem, and they aren't at fault. If it's a collapse, to me, it would seem that there's something causing it, and it shouldn't be the homeowner. That's all.
Thank you, Mr. Gray.
Thank you.
Go ahead, Counselor.
Mr. Gray, these, I'm sorry, I had a question for, if you don't mind. So one of the problems the town faces is that these sewer lines are installed by contractors paid for and engaged and hired by the homeowner, not by the town. The town has some usually supervises these things. But in the case where the sewer has collapsed, not through some earthquake or truck going over it, but it just collapsed because it was not properly put in by that private contractor, why do you think the town would be responsible in that situation?
Well, if there's a situation that it is wrongly installed, then I would say, no, it shouldn't be the town. But then again, I believe the town has to inspect these, they have the responsibility to inspect all construction sites.
They do nowadays.
And so they should have got that to begin with.
The other question I would have, you heard that Mr. Crow say that Gray's Electrical ran their camera, they have those cameras now that go down through this snake, just like
Snakes,
snake,
yeah.
right?
You understand?
And they discovered that. And one of the problems I have is that technology exists now, and every homeowner could have that done, particularly when they're buying an older home in the older parts of the town, before they ever buy. They could put that, if the realtors were frankly doing their job, they would put people on notice that this bylaw exists and that they should have these things inspected before they purchase.
I don't think that's unreasonable.
Yeah. However, it's something we're going to look at and we'll see where.
Yeah, but that's not really to do with this situation. I agree with you. It's a heck of a good idea.
Sometimes the issue happens after you're in there, so I could run the snake through and it's fine. And then a few years down the road, with your heavy traffic or whatever the issue, you know, so,
Sure.
yeah. Yeah. Good, good, thank you.
Thank
Did
you.
anybody else want to speak? You can certainly, come on up.
Sorry, there's two of me.
That's all right. We love having Walker here.
So I'm Martha Cassidy, and although I currently live on Herbert Street, I did, when I first moved here 40 years ago, we moved to Prince Street. And a couple of years after we moved, a leak developed in the water line. And we called a plumber who came, actually, I think his name was Aeneas Leblanc, or anyway, he came with a small backhoe and cleaned it out, and he looked and he said, "Oh, this is on the town's side of the water line." Yes, but so my property line. So the town will be fixing it, and there'll be no bill. And the town fixed it. So if that works for the water line, why doesn't it work for the sewer line? We still have a huge number of people who are getting water from all along, from, I don't know, Hebron, Port Maitland, heaven knows. We're getting water from a lot of places, and we're sharing it, and that infrastructure, once it's in the road and the property line, and that's basically where it was, between the property line and the middle of the road, the water line was covered. And I don't think it was because we were new to town. Thank you.
Thank you, Martha. Anyone else? Can you come up, Nick, if you don't mind? Just tell us who you are and where you live.
Oh, I'm Nick Cisco. I live on 356 Pleasant Street. When did this change? Like, what I don't understand, for 50 years, I've never heard tell of this. And then all of a sudden, in the last 6 months or so, I heard about an incident on Albert Street. And my wife told me, actually, I thought she was crazy. I said, I never heard tell of that. And then all of a sudden, Rodney's issue comes up. So, was it always this way? Because I never heard that. Like she said, the water went to the line, but I never heard tell of this.
So
with
the
sewer.
answer is yes. It's always been this way, and it's not just us. And to Mr. Crow's point, I mean, I know you research different. It's not just us that does it this way, but some units are starting to change those rules. So it's time to look at it.
When I heard about it, like, I live up on Pleasant Street, you built a nice big sidewalk. God, it's as wide as a road. And I'm thinking, if something happens out there in the road, and I have to dig that sidewalk, that curbing, that road, and then afterwards keep it up until they pave it, oh my God, it's gonna cost me a fortune. So, I mean, holy smokes, man, it's just,
Yeah.
I was shocked when I heard this. I didn't believe this. But,
Yeah.
I agree with Rodney. I think we pay pretty darn good taxes. I wouldn't be, in disagreement of paying more taxes. I hate to say that, but
See, we just lowered them. Maybe we should have kept them the same.
but I mean, to have that comfort and not have to worry about
Yeah.
that. Like, we're all getting older, we're going to retire, we don't have a whole lot of money here. But to think that I'd like to stay in my house till I was 60, 70 years old and have to come across something like this, that'd be pretty devastating. So something should be done now so that, when we get older, which we're getting pretty close, at least you know, we can get
We
that
went to
work.
school together. I beg to differ.
Well, that's why I'm not saying nothing. I'm just saying, when do we get pretty old?
We're getting up there, Nikki. We're getting up there. But,
But
well,
no,
Jack, you just don't age.
I just think he's got a good point. I agree with what Rodney's saying. I hate to see what he's going through. And I really believe that we're living in this town, we should have something better than a $10,000 bill coming for sewer. And it may never happen to most of us, but the chance is there.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Thank you. Go ahead, Counselor.
So, Rodney, in the Montreal one that you gave us, the original recommendation from the staff in Montreal was that they, that the council require the landowner to pay up to $5,000 of the cost of one of these, and then it would undertake any other cost beyond that when it happened. That was the original model that they had.
Can you hear him, Rodney? Yeah. Okay, good.
And in the end, from what I read there, in that piece of material you gave us, that the council decided, I assume they made a political decision, they decided in Montreal to take on the whole cost. But there are a number of mechanisms that could be done. I mean, we could put charges on the on your sewer bill over and above what we do now, and use it as sort of an insurance fund to cover these things. There's a number of options, but all of them are going to cost money to the taxpayers at the end of the day. And these things could be avoided. If the real estate agents were doing their job and not just interested in earning commissions, they would take responsibility for that. We could, in fact, let them know, make it sure that every realtor in town knows that we have this bylaw, and make it known that they should be recommending to their prospective clients that they have these inspections done, particularly when they're buying in the older parts of town. But that's not something, that's the way it should be. That's the way it should be. However, we're going to look at it. I don't know what the outcome's going to be.
So I'm going to say this to that, and I appreciate what you're saying as far as the real estate folks go, but I will say that, here we go down this road I didn't want to go down. Mine was fine until the street got dug up, and then I know it was the heavy traffic that separated my pipes, and it was a $10,000 bill. I can tell you right now, it wasn't going to be me to come to the council table, because it would be, you know how that works out there. Heaven forbid you try to put a bump out, much less, you know, fix the sewer bylaw. So it's not always, it's what I was saying to you, Mr. Gray, it's okay when you move in, but for various reasons, old pipes and all those pieces, there's reasons that it comes apart. So two things, and I agree with what Mr. Hood said. When people are purchasing, you know, maybe the realtors should, you know, maybe they do have to do that. Jack, you might even have an answer to that.
That doesn't solve the problem.
No, it doesn't.
Even if it's there, what you're going to end up doing is that you want to lock the buildings.
Yeah.
It's not
Yeah.
sales.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. Mr. Crow, did you want to come up and, yeah?
Councillor Hood asked me a question. Did I have my plumbing checked when I bought my home?
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to ask him the exact same question. Pardon me?
No, I didn't.
Why?
Didn't know it.
You assumed everything was flowing at the time well? You assumed it was good, right?
Rodney, I've had enough leaks in my house, and it's taken 15 years to figure them all out. I've got them like.
I never had an inkling of problems with my home.
Covering up water pipe that he replaced, I had him removing the sump pump, not telling me what was there.
Don't go down that road, but put your light on if you're going to travel anywhere.
The other thing I wanted to mention too is 2 years ago they did Green Street, all the infrastructure on Green Street. Most of them tandem trucks full of gravel went up and down my street every day, all day, for 2 months. I'm willing to bet Tooker Street is not rated for that kind of weight and traffic.
Yeah, I don't know that. I don't know the answer to that.
It's a secondary street. It's not one of the main streets, so you know it's not really meant to take that kind of heavy traffic
Yeah.
that long, that continuously.
Yeah.
So how is that any good for the infrastructure under the street? And why should the homeowner have to pay for it? I didn't say that, hey, let's fix Green Street, the hell with my street.
Yeah.
Basically what I'm saying. And, you know, it's, you gotta do what you gotta do. I realize the town is old, I realize a lot of the infrastructure is old, and it's gotta be done, and you can only do so much at one time. But I don't think it should be put on the homeowner to take care of each little piece at a time as it breaks, so you guys can deal on bump outs and flowers hanging from light poles and lights that don't work at Christmas time and that sort of stuff. Sorry, I don't mean to knock all this stuff down. It's nice to have when it works and when it's there and when you've got the money to do it. But
Yep.
come on,
Good. Thank you, Mr. Crowe.
thanks.
Oh, sorry. Be nice.
Rodney, I will tell you, I have one sewer backup along with some other problems.
You know, I heard, I was talking to some of your neighbors.
No.
They were willing to bet that you weren't going to say anything about it, so I guess they were
No,
wrong.
but I'll tell you the secret. It was a gob of dental floss. I'm a freak on dental floss. It doesn't deteriorate. Don't put it down the toilet.
No worries, I don't put anything like that down.
Yeah. Thank you, Councillor Hood. Joey? You tell us your name and where you live, please.
My name is Joey Sred of Cliff Kirk Street. I went down to work last Tuesday morning. I came back to work and go back home. There's no water. And there's no way back home around 9 o'clock this morning. And I went back home and said, I called my work at home and said, there's no work. And Wednesday morning, there's no water, there's no water. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So Joey, I'm sort of gonna answer your question. And CAO, you step in if you want to step in. There's a huge project. There's a huge project being done on Main Street and Cliff Street that's taken a few months. That feels like 20 years. But it's only been a few months. We're really fortunate that it's only taken that long to do such a big job. And so now they're going up your entire street. Joey lives on Cliff Street. And they're going up your entire street, so your water is going to be on and off. I actually had a call from the YMCA too. Their water was kind of off and on. So they're working on the pipes. So have a shower and a bath when you have a chance, okay?
Last Tuesday morning, I went to work. I took a bath last one, then came home, came to work. I said, when we go back home, there's no water.
Yeah.
And, good, there's no water. Back home again. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Joey. Okay, are we good? Did anybody else want to speak? Bill, you want to come up? We know who you are, but just for the record, welcome.
My name is Bill Cisco, and I live at 35 Pleasant Street. And I'd like to thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak. I've lived in my home for probably 50 years, and I appreciate you taking the time to ask these questions. But for myself, I've never had a home inspector because I've lived there for 50 years.
Yeah.
Now, I can maintain my home, I can save up money, shingle the roof, try to keep the property up, maintain it, but there's no way that I can prepare if that sewer collapses in the road. I can't buy insurance for that, I can't really prepare for that, and to me, I understand how it's set up, but I truly believe it's unfair. And I really believe there's a lot of people in this town that don't understand that because they think it's like the water and they're going to be fine. But if you look at some of the seniors that live like in the south end of town where a lot of the infrastructure is extremely old, if these people run into this situation, they're one sewer collapse away from losing their home. And because it's a big expense. And if you're on a fixed income, you can't handle that. I know the town gives people reductions in their taxes if they're seniors, but what's going to happen to them if this happens? There's nothing in place to help them. They're going to be in a position where they're going to lose their homes. We know in this day and age that it's more feasible for people to be in their own homes than for us to have to put them in housing in these situations. You want people to live in their own homes. You want people to pay their taxes. But I don't understand how we can prepare and maintain our homes and keep ourselves in a position as we get older to prevent something like this from wiping us out. You know, you save money for RSPs, you look to try and provide so that you don't have to go on assistance, but a system that's set up this way is set up to make a senior citizen fail. I mean, you pay your taxes, you look after your home all your life, but as you get older and your income decreases, it's harder and harder to do these things, to maintain it. And a situation like this, to a person, is going to be devastating. And I'm not arguing the point that it's right, I'm just saying it's not fair, and I think it's a situation that we should look at and see, how do we prevent it? What do we have to do as a community to change this situation? Because I really believe it's something that can be changed. I'm not saying that the town should have to pay it all or whatever, but I really truly believe it's a situation that should be looked at constructively, and see how can we prevent it. I agree with Mr. Hood. If homes are being sold, then maybe it should be looked at and said, at that time, if you're going to purchase a home, you have to have a home inspector. They have to look at these things and take it into consideration. And if you don't, well, then you're going to bear the burden of that. But people who've lived in their homes for 50 or 60 years, they have no way to prepare for this. And like I said, in the south end of town, a lot of that infrastructure is old. It's very old. And if it collapses, there's nothing I can do about it. And I look at it and I say, well, suppose the guy down the road from me has this situation happen, and it collapses, and he can't pay for it, and it begins to clog, and it moves down the line. Now mine's clogged. I have no control over what's happening, all the other houses on the street. Do I then become responsible for it? What happens? But I really believe it's a situation that's wrong, and I'm not saying it's because of council did it wrong or this, but I say in this day and age, it's a situation that I believe is wrong, can be corrected, but should really be looked at and addressed.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Cisco. So I'll say this again, just for clarity. We aren't just, council won't discuss this tonight, just because that's our rules, that we don't make decisions or discuss on the same night. But I don't want anyone for even a split second to think that we don't take it seriously, or that we aren't, because I know the staff has been tasked with, you know, finding us more information and all those pieces. And Mr. Crow, thank you. We've got your documents here with all the names and everything, so thank you for doing that. I'll bet you got your steps in every single day. You didn't need a Fitbit.
In that stack of papers I gave you, you had a chance to look at a bunch of comments as well.
Certainly. And I'll make sure that council, you'll each get to take a look at all these so everyone sees it. Okay? Good? So thank you everyone for coming for this piece. We really appreciate you all showing up. And speaking to the brave souls, the Cisco boys. Okay? So business arising, first reading taxi bylaw amendment. Linda, can we? Okay. Go ahead, Counselor. Linda, can you take this so I don't? Oh, good, okay.
We normally make a motion to excuse Counselor Sandy Dennis from our meetings. So I would like to move that motion at this time if it's appropriate.
Moved and seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Contrary? Motion carried. Okay. All right, so the first reading of the taxi bylaw, CAO.
Thank you, Your Worship. The amendment in the taxi bylaw this time around has to do with the makeup, or who is the taxi advisory committee. In the past, we've had a taxi advisory committee that has been made up of members of council as well as members of the community and from the industry. We have had we've been unsuccessful in attracting any members from the industry to participate in the committee over the last couple of years, and that has stood in the way of us making changes within the bylaw, because in order to make changes to the bylaw, the advisory committee should review and recommend. So the amendment tonight for first reading is to amend the bylaw so that Committee of the Whole sits as the Taxi Advisory Committee. And so that change, if it goes through 2 readings and passes, would enable this group, when you sit as Committee of the Whole, to make amendments to the taxi bylaw, including if you have interest from the industry at a later date, you could amend at that time the makeup of the committee to reestablish those seats at the table for industry members. So it's first reading.
Okay, just finding it under the, here. Okay, so we have the first reading here. Looking for a motion to proceed to what? Oh, the public hearing.
I'll make a motion, we move the taxi bylaw to first readings. Second.
Moved and seconded. Question's been called. All those in favor? Aye. Contrary? Motion carried. Thanks, folks. We have, we're going to soon get a request for an increase in.
And I think Councillor.
Go ahead, Deputy.
And I think that's when you're going to get buy-in from the taxi community to come in and
Yeah.
be a part of the taxi committee again. I think that's the opportunity, and I think Councillor Hood stated that a meeting or 2 ago. I think that's where you're going to get buy-in from the industry itself. So I can't wait for those guys to come to the table.
Good stuff. Okay, Community Asset Donation Program, CAO.
Your Worship, we talked about this at the Committee of the Whole, so amendments have been made to the policy effectively to eliminate a committee that stood between staff working with the donor and implementing the policy and bringing it back to council. So the process now would be that council approves the policy, staff identify the assets, the costs, and we deal with donors, provide tax receipts, and install the donated assets as quickly as we can. And there are options for recognition of citizens with those donations. And so if you approve this policy, that will be the process. So the process was that the donor would come forward, work with staff, and then it would go to an advisory committee and then ultimately to council on each bench or garbage can or tree. At this point, we think if council approves the policy, we'll be able to work with the citizens, receive the donations, install the assets without having to come back every time for each approval.
That works for me. And the non-acceptance portion of that's really good as well. It's good policy. Go ahead, Councillor.
Well, that non-acceptance clause, I would suggest you'd add something to that.
Okay, what you got for us?
Well, for any reason it deems appropriate, I would say according to law, to be added to it. That would mean a council couldn't violate the Human Rights Code, for instance.
Okay.
So I would move that that be amended if council deems it appropriate to do so.
So don't turn your light out yet. Does that fall into town, exposes town to potential liability? Probably not. That's different.
No, it's just a matter
Okay.
of just clarifying it. I mean, as it's written, it says, refuse to accept any proposed donation on the, reserves the right to not accept any donation for any reason it deems appropriate. Well, if you did it for, so if you add the words, what did I say? According to law? Yeah. Well, that simply is, it broadly says, we've got to do it. We cannot refuse a donation for something that's not lawful to refuse. So, for instance, if there could be an issue under the Human Rights Act, that comes to mind, and we might think it appropriate not to do it, but it's a violation of the Human Rights Act, can't do it. And there's numerous other situations like that.
Okay. Greg, you good with that?
That's fine.
Okay. Good? So, certainly. Seconded. Okay, so we're voting on the amendment. Okay. The amendment is to add according to law. All those in favor? Aye. Contrary? Motion carried, and now we are voting on the entire... Yeah, for the whole thing, yeah. So a motion for the whole policy. Okay, Councillor Barry?
Second.
Second by Deputy. All those in favor? Aye. Contrary? Motion carried. Good. Okay, new business, Shark Scramble.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'd like to make a motion that the town of Yarmouth grant $1,000 to the Shark Scramble organization.
Moved and seconded. We had a little bit of money left over, didn't we? Will that matter? We say yes? No, I just want to know if we have the money in that. Okay. All right, moved and seconded. Any discussion?
Question.
Question's been called. All those in favor? Aye. Contrary? Motion carried. Go ahead, Deputy.
Your Worship, I'd like to make a motion the town of Yarmouth send letters of congratulations to the Honourable Chris D'Entremont, the Honourable Zach Churchill, and Gordon Wilson on their re-election.
Okay, so moved. Seconded. Question's been called. All those in favor?
Aye.
Contrary? Motion carried. Linda, if you can do that now, we can give it to Zach's dad and have that hand delivered. Congratulations. I know how proud you are. It's a proud moment when that happens. Okay. Request for proposals, waterfront development. Go ahead, CAO.
Your Worship, this was one of Council's priorities to develop to create a development plan for Water Street that encompasses all aspects of the use of Water Street, from infrastructure, industry, housing, zoning, everything that goes along with it. Our planner, Morris Lloyd, has worked with Natalie, our economic development officer, to put together, and myself, a little bit of input to put together this request for proposals to seek consultants to do that work. We've brought the request for proposal document to you before we issue it to ensure that we're on the same page, that we've got it right in terms of what we're looking for. And with your approval, we'll issue the RFP and hopefully by the end of the summer bring back a recommendation on a consultant.
Okay, so I have a question. Go ahead.
Your Worship, thank you very much, Jeff. I want to make a motion to approve of the RFP, but I also want to ask a question, Jeff. Can we send this out individually to the members of the Waterfront Development Committee? Yeah, okay. So
Okay, thank you. Go ahead.
Just to elaborate a little bit to Councillor MacLeod and to inform Council is that Mr. Lloyd did bring forward a draft of this to the Waterfront Development Corporation. They had a great conversation, and there was some great feedback from the members of the corporation in terms of this project. So yeah, we'll make sure they each get a copy of this to peruse, and I know they're very interested in this process.
thank you, Jeff.
So it's not a done deal because all the dates are crossed out. What was that about?
So we had aspirations of bringing it to you a bit earlier, and so that didn't happen, and we just crossed the dates out rather than presuming that you would approve it tonight, and we will fill those dates in with new dates, and Mr. Lloyd and I have talked about that, and I think we'd like to be back here in August with a recommendation.
Good. Mr. Lloyd, did you want to say anything? Step right up to the microphone. Introduce yourself.
I don't know there's a great deal I can add, Your Worship. I think you have a good request for proposals in front of you. It's been structured so that we can get the maximum out of the consultants and use their creativity in looking at the waterfront. And we've tried to level the playing field so that everybody can compete, and I think it's just a good proposal. I'd be happy to answer questions if anybody wants.
I like that we asked the questions, that series of questions that we
Yes.
posed. That was something I've not seen in that form in an
Well,
RFP.
Those are worked out between the staff, principally the Economic Development Officer and myself, and with the input from Jeff, of course. And it's an approach that we're giving the consultant maximum flexibility, but we also are picking their brains to the maximum extent, and I think it's a good approach.
Good. Any questions for the planner? Or good? So thank you very much for all the work you put into this. I'm looking for a motion to approve the RFP for the waterfront development. Oh, it's done. Oh, moved and seconded. All those in favor? Aye. Contrary? Motion carried. Reports, council advisory committees. Deputy, go ahead.
Thank you, Your Worship. I make a motion that the town of Yarmouth provide YASTA with $2,750 towards the organization of the 2018 Union of Nova Scotia Municipalities Spring Workshop contingent on the other two municipalities agreeing to contribute.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion? Question's been called. All those in favor?
Aye.
Contrary? Motion carried.
Your Worship, I make a motion that staff be directed to collect information on the cost for additional green cart pickups in the summer and bring back a recommendation to council.
Yeah, Councillor McLeod's not going to second that one. Moved and seconded. He's smiling now. Yeah. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Contrary? Motion carried.
Your Worship, I move that council endorse the lifting of parking restrictions on Water Street between Glebe Street North as far as the 2-hour parking limit reaches.
We talked about it, yeah. Okay. Moved and seconded. Any discussion?
Question.
Question's been called. All those in favor?
Aye.
Contrary? Motion carried.
Your Worship, I move that councillors McLeod and Cleveland be appointed to the 2018 UNSM Conference Committee.
Moved and seconded. Discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Contrary? Motion carried. Okay, so council advisory, planning advisory. So Councillor McLeod, did you have anything else, Deputy? You're good?
Thank you.
Okay. Go ahead, Councillor.
There are several recommendations from June the 8th, the public hearing. I move to amend the land use bylaw to rezone 29 Stars Road from open space O2 to general commercial as outlined in our planner's report.
So this was the public hearing that we had earlier. So you can't participate in this one. Am I allowed to say that? Yeah.
You weren't here, that's
Yep,
all.
go ahead.
Yeah, so,
No, you don't have to leave. You're good. You
So-
just can't vote.
yeah, so the rule, just for everybody's clarity, is on planning matters, if you're not present during the public hearing, then you can't participate in the vote on the matter when it comes to council.
Good. And we know you were at a funeral. Yeah, we knew that. No, there's no consequences there. Okay, moved and seconded. Any discussion? Call for the question. All those in favor?
Aye.
Contrary? Motion carried. And go ahead there, Councillor McLeod.
I move to proceed to a public hearing in order to consider, and if deemed advisable, amend the land use bylaw to permit the building for accessory use to be constructed on the vacant lot under conditions. The conditions being that the accessory use be removed if either of the lots change ownership unless a building for permitted use is constructed on the lot housing the accessory use. Seems busy and complicated, but it was well discussed at a planning meeting.
Certainly was. Okay? So that motion's been made. I'm looking for a seconder. Thank you, Councillor Cleveland. Any more discussion?
Question.
Question's been called. All those in favor? Aye. Contrary? Motion carried.
I move to proceed to a public hearing in order to consider, and if deemed advisable, amend the land use bylaw by removing section 6.61A, which only allows one-sided signs, and replacing it with a new section, 6.61A, which will allow multi-sided signs.
So moved. Councillor Barry, you're allowed to second that because you're okay with these.
Okay, second.
Okay, thank you. Oh, that it had been this easy for, wow. Okay, moved and seconded. Any discussion? Question's been called. All those in favor?
Aye.
Contrary? Motion carried.
Third item from May the 9th, I move to proceed to a public hearing in order to consider, and if deemed advisable, amend the land use bylaw to permit on-site construction of one-bedroom, two-unit buildings, mini homes in the East Side Village Mobile Home Park on Argyle Street and Ellis Road.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Discussion? Jack, you good? Did you want to say anything? You good? Okay. Question's been called. All those in favor?
Aye.
Contrary? Motion carried.
From the Planning Advisory Committee meeting of June the 6th, 4 items. I move to proceed to a public hearing in order to consider, and if deemed advisable, amend the land use bylaw setback for accessory buildings where existing buildings are less than 15 feet from the street as outlined in our planner's report.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion?
Question.
Question's been called. All those in favor?
Aye.
Contrary? Motion carried. Hi, Randy.
Second item, I move to proceed to a public hearing in order to consider, and if deemed advisable, amend the land use bylaw by removing the requirement for mandatory bicycle parking units, but facilitating their construction if users so wish to add them to their dwelling units at any time as outlined in our planner's report.
So moved. Seconded. Okay, any discussion? Question's been called. All those in favor? Aye. Contrary? Motion carried.
Third item, I move to proceed to a public hearing in order to consider, and if deemed advisable, amend the land use bylaw to provide clarity with respect to permitting more than one kitchen in a dwelling report as outlined in our planner's report.
Moved. Seconded. Any discussion?
Question.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Contrary? Motion carried.
Fourth item, I move to proceed to a public hearing in order to consider, and if deemed advisable, amend the land use bylaw to clarify the setback from flanking streets in the general commercial C2 zone, Stars Road mostly, as outlined in our planner's report.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion?
Question.
Question's been called. All those in favor?
Aye.
Contrary? Motion carried.
Thank-
Admittedly, some of these, I would say, wow, like when you sit at the Planning Advisory Committee or you attend Planning Advisory meeting, the discussion is great around all these. You just learn so much about every one of these.
Talk to Jim.
It's really cool, yeah.
Speak
Talk
to
to
Jim.
Jim. Talk to Jim. Okay, go ahead, Counselor. You good? You're welcome. You're welcome. Okay. Accessory buildings, mobile homes, accessory. Reports for information. Anyone? We're good. Questions for committee chairs. So maybe, I don't want to put anybody on the spot, Councillor Cleveland, and Deputy Mayor, but we just attended FCM, the Federation of Canadian Municipalities, and it was an off-the-charts learning experience. Did you want to say what sessions you went to, either one of you, or anything you want to share? Go ahead, Deputy.
Thank you, Your Worship. It was a great opportunity to network with some of our fellow municipal units right across the country. The more you think you're different from Victoria, British Columbia to St. John's, Newfoundland, we all have the exact same problems, and it was good to hear some of our federal representatives. The Prime Minister was there. We had a couple of ministers there talk about the role that municipalities have in playing in upgrading our infrastructure right across the country, and their commitment not only to pipes, sewers, other things, but right into social housing was one of the topics that was brought up. So not only were the sessions great, the vibe was really good. I think it was one of the most upbeat ones I've been to. But I think where you get your biggest bang for the buck, and I know Councillor Cleveland had an idea of going through the trade show. Your Worship, I hauled you over to see a toilet. Now, how was that?
Portable, self-washing
Toilets. You can't blow them up.
No.
Yeah, and going through the trade show, I think they had over 170 vendors this year.
Largest ever.
Largest one ever. So it was well worth it. I know Councillor Cleveland, over the next couple of months, he's going to come back with an idea for something that he saw that's going to enhance our tourism and convention abilities. So I'll let him talk about that. But I think it was a great experience for anybody that went there. And next year, everybody was excited to come back to Atlantic Canada. Next year it's going to be in Halifax. So we had plenty of opportunity. I know I saw Your Worship several times telling people that we're on the edge of everywhere. Halifax is Halifax. I think you told Mike Savage that the selling point should be come to Halifax because you're only 2.5 short hours away from Yarmouth. I think that's what your selling point was, and Mayor Savage even said that a couple times. So it coming to the East Coast next year can only be another great experience.
Exactly. It was an off-the-charts learning experience. Councillor Cleveland?
It really was. To echo Councillor Mooney, Your Worship, my first time. I've never been to anything like that before. 2,000 plus delegates. It really is amazing to me just how similar the problems are everywhere, literally everywhere from well, Nunavut to British Columbia to right there in Ontario. The problems are all very much the same. Learned a lot, had some very lively discussions about various things, got a great opportunity to network with a lot of different people, which is great. There were many interesting ones there. And you were there actually for the one on anti-poverty and attempts for various regions and cities to eliminate poverty in a generation. I have my doubts, but it is really admirable the kind of ambition that you see in that kind of thing. Got a really great chance to go on a study tour and see what Ottawa is doing with their Main Street revitalization, involving an awful lot of art.
And what else is there?
An awful lot of bump outs, Your Worship. There were a lot of bump outs. And an actual distinctive plan to narrow and slow down the street traffic. Not to the point where nobody can go through, but to the point where it becomes much more accessible for pedestrians. And in their case, not just pedestrians. Ottawa is a very green city, and there's a lot of bike traffic. An amazing amount. There are bike trails or bike pathways everywhere there. And not only are they being used by bikes, they're being used by rollerblades and skateboards, and so there is a lot of that. It really was a great experience. Again, the trade show, everything from toilets, which really excited Councillor Mooney, to mobile,
the mayor over
to mobile stages, which may be quite useful for us, and many other things, outdoor skating rinks and an amazing amount of things. Splash parks. There was. The trade show was so large that you actually had to go through it several times in order to catch everything, and there's a lot of networking done there as well. So it was a great experience. Thank you.
I love the networking the best, and I made a new friend, Mayor Nenshi from Calgary. So it's great just to ask, how are you doing? I know it's a big city, and a couple of people have said lately, "What are you trying to turn Yarmouth into a city?" And that's not it at all. We're trying to, and we're very successfully doing so. We're just trying to create that dynamic, alive community where everybody is welcome and everybody wants to be. So, I mean, in between meetings, and I know because I spent time with both of you guys, but just trying to scoot around to find a different place to even grab lunch because you want to see what that area is like. So for me, I think what I ended up posting was just that, like a lot of the bump outs that you wouldn't even realize are a bump out. So right behind us here, the whole Fisherman's Memorial is a bump out. And people are there all the time, they're reading it and they're sitting on the benches and they're having conversations and they're grabbing a coffee, and it takes space that wasn't used at all except for a bunch of white lines drawn on the pavement saying don't park, which is bare, unused, useless space, and it turns it into a gathering space for people. And we've just been having kind of email conversations the last couple days with the CAO and the Economic Development Officer with regard to, busking, and people have said, can buskers happen in Yarmouth without permits? And so far the answer is yes, there are some guidelines, but these bump outs will allow people to, I can see young people on the corners there doing their art. And I can see them bringing their guitars and putting their hat out, and it's just the coolest thing. It just brings a community to life and uses space that hasn't been used before. And it actually does make it much safer, because now people are starting to say to me, listen, I took a walk and I can see that you can definitely see those crosswalks, that people will know where to cross. And so it's all positive. I was away for part of the day today just doing, actually for a big company, a workshop on dealing with change, because everybody has difficulty. It doesn't matter how big or small the change is, there are difficulties. And even a change as great as this sewer separation project, where we have to close down the street. You can't repave a street and have it open. And it's difficult on some businesses, and people are watching their days, how long is this going to last? But in the end you get hundreds of thousands in savings from the sewer plant, and you also get a newly paved street, which is what everybody's asking for. So we're doing that little by little.
They about the street than they are about the water. They're not saving the money.
Yeah, exactly. So anyway, it's all positive, and I gotta say, I'm just really proud of what we've been doing. It's exciting. People from, actually, I used to say in Nova Scotia, but throughout the country, I have other mayors calling and saying, how are you doing this? How are you managing things that we hear about Yarmouth? And that's a good thing, because we're making changes. We're managing it, but we're not afraid of anything. Well, that's because we're on the edge of everywhere. So it's all good. It just has to come together.
And Your Worship, I was out for supper on the Friday night.
Oh, yeah.
And I met, Gary's going to like this, Gary Nickerson. Gary, you're going to like this.
We were
You're
talking
going to like
about
this.
downtown.
I'm talking to you.
Being back in school.
I was out for
News. This is big news.
I was out for supper on Friday night in Ottawa, and sitting right next to me, I didn't even notice, my wife noticed two people sitting next to me. They're basically almost touching me. That's how close they were. And it was Craig Oliver and Kevin Vickers, the Sergeant at Arms. They were a couple years ago in the House of Commons when the gentleman went, well, not the gentleman, but the person went in the House of Commons, and Mr. Vickers was a true Canadian hero at the time. But I talked to Craig Oliver, and I said, Mr. Oliver, I'm Phil Mooney, Deputy Mayor from the town of Yarmouth. He said, the home of Hannah Thibodeau and the starting point for Senator Jim Munson at CJLS. So Craig Oliver knows that Yarmouth is on the map. So
That's right.
there were two gentlemen, and to say that I was from Yarmouth and Craig Oliver to come up without any prodding from me saying about Hannah. I hired Hannah from Yarmouth, and Jim Munson started his career at CJLS. They know that we're on the map.
Are we looking at Senator Gary in a couple of years?
Oh, from Senator Hartley. That'd be the Hartley question on
That's
Monday
it,
morning.
Senator Hartley.
That'd be the question Monday morning. That'd be Hartley.
Oh, I love it. I love it. Thanks for sharing, guys. Anybody else want to say anything? We're good? Okay. Additions, Herbert Street. We're there, finally. Sorry, Reverend. Okay. So are we just, it's just looking for this motion? Go ahead, CAO.
So, Your Worship, based on the fact that you've now met the requirement of the public hearing, a motion to direct staff to lease the property at 2 to 6 Herbert Street to the Food Bank Society for $1 a month would be in order.
So moved. Second.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion? Questions been called? Let's see if we can pull this through. All those in favor? Aye. Contrary? Motion carried. Oh, Jim, I didn't see you in the back row there. Welcome. I'm glad you're here. So how are we doing on that? Mm-hmm. So now you're good to go? Okay. All right. Good. Okay. Good stuff. What's that? Oh, did Gary hear that?
Hello, I'm here too.
No. What I'm Tina, what I'm referring to is you're paying attention, Gary.
I was typing it, looking to be in operation by September.
Now you know what I went to primary 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. I did my year all day.
Okay. So I'm looking for approval of invoices, please.
So
Moved, seconded. All those in favor? Aye. Contrary? Motion carried. And the date of next meeting is July 13th, and a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Good stuff. Thanks, folks.
From what? Selfie of what?
You and me.
Why? I don't look good here tonight. Well, you can take one, but I'll decide if it gets used.
You're going to